everybody. It's warm outside now, but earlier it was 40 degrees and kind of cold and chilly. But it was sunny outside, and I was making my walk in the park, making my way around there, and I looked up, picture perfect blue sky, and it reminded me of walking down Schneider Avenue towards the big house. For over 10 years, I made that walk. It runs, Snyder does, parallel to Stadium, and it, that you do this, you get to fall. It happens. Everybody, whatever it is, September 15th, maybe it's early October. You start saying it feels like football weather, and it felt like football weather out there. After today, it's not going to be cold, this cold, where it's going to get down into the 30s or 40s, going to be more like in the 50s. And heck, we're not even into summertime yet, and we'll look forward to those days coming up in the college football season and the Michigan season of 2023, which holds so much promise. And we're here to talk about it. We're here 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, talking about the latest in Michigan sports. And today, I've got for you a few things that you might not be thinking about when it comes to rooting for Michigan. Because I think we could all agree, those of you that are watching or listening, that everyone's rooting for Michigan to win all of their games, Michigan to win the Big Ten again, Michigan to beat Ohio State and go to Indianapolis in the college football playoffs. And heck, everybody's rooting for Michigan to win it all. So we know that, but you might not be thinking about these couple subtle things when it comes down to rooting for Michigan. I've got a wide receiver that I want to talk about and for some rooting interest in why I would root the way that I'm rooting. Same thing about a coach. In fact, it's going to be the head coach. But we'll start talking about rooting for the quarterback, and that's J.J. McCarthy. Those of you that are old enough, or I'll say those of you that are sports aficionados, you'll know about the NFL draft and the answer to what is the record number of quarterbacks taken in the first round of the NFL draft. A lot of people are able to snap their fingers pretty quickly and know that it was the 1983 NFL draft, which featured John Elway from Stanford up at the top, and then Jim Kelly, who was taken one pick after the Lions selected a fullback out of Florida. The Bills selected Jim Kelly, and then Dan Marino, because of character issues, fell down to almost the last pick in the NFL draft. And then there were another three, Ken O'Brien and some others that were taken. But that is the most amount of quarterbacks that have ever been taken in the NFL draft. And we're talking about, 40 years of draft. So, and there've been, five here. You think about the year Lamar Jackson went, there were five. So, close to six, but I don't know about as a rule, but I think you can look and think about, five, and you got to go back 40 years. So you're even talking about a half dozen. So I want you to think about that as we get into the first part about what you would root for. And it's coming down to J.J. McCarthy and where McCarthy fits in. As you know, he has the potential to be a first round draft pick, but can you root for a bunch of other quarterbacks to have great years so that maybe JJ comes back for his senior season? And that's what I'm getting at. I admit that this is kind of a tough one to think about and root for, because if you just sit back and say, if JJ McCarthy in Michigan, they do what you want, which is do all the things that we just talked about, win it all, get to the college football playoff and win it all. Is there really a chance that then J.J. McCarthy, just based on that you would think that he would not be a first-round draft pick? And I'm going to say probably not. I think if McCarthy goes undefeated again in the regular season and wins the Big Ten championship again, and then this time wins a semifinal game and gets to the championship game and wins it all, I'm thinking he's going to be playing pretty well, and that he is going to be talked about as a lock first round draft pick. Maybe not number one overall. Is there a chance that he could be the number one pick overall? I would say that if you are working where I just have started this conversation off, that Michigan wins it all. That's where we're starting this conversation. And you say, do you think then if Michigan wins it all, would JJ McCarthy have a chance to be the number one overall pick in the NFL draft? I would say yes. Now, I wouldn't predict sitting here that JJ would be the number one pick, with all the other selections out there. But if you're telling me that Michigan wins the national championship, I could see it. I mean, he would then, I would think, have a great year. Michigan had a great year. I would think that he would be thought of very highly. And if he wasn't the number one pick, maybe number two, top five, then I would feel comfortable actually betting on McCarthy being a top five pick if you told me that Michigan was going to win it all. But what about all the other things that fall into the possibilities of things that could happen? Well, for that, I am going to put up a story from CBS Sports. And they have a dozen quarterbacks potentially that could be first round selections. If you're looking at the headline, if you're watching the VCast here, the headline says 7 college football quarterbacks who could emerge as potential first round draft picks with standout 23 seasons. And you said, oh, I thought you said a dozen. Well, they have 7, but then they have 5. And here's a picture of JJ McCarthy that caught my eye to actually go through this story. But the young man that wrote this referenced the mock draft expert from CBS Sports named Ryan Wilson, who put his 24 NFL mock draft together. And he put 5 QBs that were projected to go into the first round. Ones that are all household names that you'd probably agree with. Caleb Williams, who won the Heisman Trophy last year. Drake May from North Carolina. Quinn Ewers, they're at Texas. Oregon's Bo Nix, the former Auburn QB. Washington's Southpaw Michael Penix Jr., the Indiana transfer. So there's 5 QBs. And remember, 6 is the record. And so then this writer is saying, all right, there were 3 this year. And then think about the 3 that were thought of possibly as being first round picks, and Will Levis and Hendon Hooker, or maybe 2 that were thought of as of potentially being in the first round. And obviously they fell out of the first round. But the young man that wrote this piece named Cameron Salerno looked at 7 others who, if they had good seasons, could end up in the first round. And that's where we get to JJ McCarthy. But let's just go through the 7 and then we'll talk about it a little bit. I like Jaden Daniels from LSU. He was a transfer from Arizona State. LSU could have an excellent season. He is a dual threat guy who looked pretty good against Alabama when I was watching him last year, and he ran for almost 900 yards and 11 touchdowns after transferring. And then, there he is. He's under Brian Kelly. So he's helped his draft stock, and, you could see him potentially working himself into the first round. You'll remember this name if you're a Michigan fan, Joe Milton III. So there you go. Could Milton have the same rise at Tennessee that Hooker had last season? I don't think so, but hey, there is big Joe Milton. Also mentioned on this list, J.J. McCarthy, who came into last season in a quarterback battle with Cade McNamara before ultimately winning the job and leading Michigan to a college football playoff berth. There you go. Here is what the writer says about McCarthy. Made a handful of questionable decisions, including throwing 2 picks, returned for touchdowns. Those turnovers ultimately swung the game in TCU's favor. So there you go. But he mentions that the Wolverines will be ranked as one of the top teams in the preseason, and they return 84% of the total production from last year on offense. You know, I didn't realize that they were returning 84% of total production. So, what are you taking Schoonmaker and Ronnie Bell out of there when you're talking about offensive production? They made up, 16%. So, Michigan returning 84% of total production. I don't know how you would work offensive line in there. So, I think you are talking about skill position players. This writer thinks on paper that Michigan may be even better this season, especially if McCarthy improves his decision making in his second full season. All right, he goes through Roman Wilson, Kojo, 2 reliable targets, and then how he builds on it will determine where he hears his name called next spring. I'm in on that. I think that's a fine write up. The Rattler, Spencer Rattler from South Carolina, wants the number 1 QB coming in before he transferred. So there are the 7 guys, along with a couple other. Jordan Travis from Florida State, DJ Uiagalelei from Oregon State. Obviously, he was at Clemson last year, and then Tyler Van Dyke down at the U. That completes the 7. So there's a dozen quarterbacks, including J.J. McCarthy. Not all 12 of those guys are going to be picked in the first round. There's 5 right now that are ahead of McCarthy, but I don't know if they ranked him in the 7, but there is a chance. But so here's my thing about rooting, and you talk it through, and I'll just see where the people are at. If you're there, and we'd like to hear what you have to say about it. So can you root for a bunch of quarterbacks that have great years so that maybe JJ comes back for his senior season? That's what I'm saying. This is a tough one because you want both Michigan and McCarthy to have the best seasons that they possibly can. And then also, is it greedy? I don't know, greedy, selfish, maybe a little bit of both of those things, saying, I want it all. And I would also like McCarthy to come back. Now, I don't know who said you can have your cake and eat it too, but this applies here. You want everything that McCarthy could bring to the table with his fantastic season, dual threat quarterback, realizing his potential. Michigan wins it all. And then you also want McCarthy to come back. I don't know how realistic that is, but there's a lot of things that could fall in between. You don't like to talk about, Michigan falling short of a national championship, but it could happen. And then, you're thinking, it could be close. And I do think, it's been pointed out. Josh Henschke, the publisher at the Maize and Blue Review, when the topic of McCarthy comes up, he almost always writes that he's a different dude. Like he's a different kind of guy. He goes to his own beat to his own drum, whatever that saying is. He walks to the beat of his own drum. I think that's what it is. And I can see that McCarthy is that way. Remember when there was a lot of stuff going on with Harbaugh and the pros? McCarthy came out and before he was at Michigan, it was like, hey, I'm a leader. He didn't say that, but he was like, everything's going to be okay. Chill out. I don't know if he said it that way either, but it was something like that. And that was kind of a sign of who J.J. McCarthy was. But is there a world where Michigan has a great season and so does McCarthy, and yet he is still looked at as maybe the 6th or 7th guy on this list, not a first rounder, and then he peaks to next year, and then he also looks at Michigan and says, name, image, and likeness isn't all that bad. And I don't know what the quorum got exactly or the valuation of the name, image, and likeness, but McCarthy will make more than anybody if he, after the season, whatever it holds, the upcoming season, and was thinking about coming back and he was going to be a fringe first rounder and he walked in there with Harbaugh might be like, we got a pretty good deal for you to come back, JJ, and do it one more time. And then, so, it's possible. What would I put the percentage at? That's a good question, and one that I haven't thought of until right now. What are the chances that J.J. McCarthy comes back for his senior season? I would put it at close to 50%, but I don't like to say right at 50 because that seems like a tie or even a cop out. So I will say, because I think he's going to have a good year, and I think Michigan's going to have a good year. I think he's going to be moving up these rankings. I think there's a 40% chance that J.J. McCarthy could come back next year. And I think Michigan's going to have a good year. So it sounds a little bit like, and it almost feels like it's a little bit of me being a homer. It sounds like I'm saying that Michigan and you can have your cake and eat it too. Let's see what the people think about J.J. McCarthy and the possibility of rooting for other quarterbacks, still rooting for McCarthy, and then having him come back. How about that? Richard missed the show 1:00 yesterday. Yeah, Richard, I miss seeing you, man. I did. Andres said there was a void in his life without the Good Afternoon Michigan football program. He might as well turn to hard drugs. Well, don't turn, just say no, Andres. But you know what? Let me go ahead and tell you. I was still working yesterday. Just say yes to the Maize and Blue review, because you know what I did yesterday? In lieu of coming on and talking here on the podcast, I went out and wrote about Michigan's non-conference schedule, Penn State's top elite talent that they have, and then U of M's last 3 regular season games of this upcoming season. And I posted that all on the Den on the Maize and Blue review. So I'm still here. I'll still be around on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'll just be writing. And so what better chance do you have, Andres, than joining up the Maize and Blue review today by going to michigan.rivals.com. And then on Tuesday, just what we're doing here, it'll just be taking place on the Den. So make that happen, and we'll see you there. But I appreciate the fine comments. But yeah, Andres, take it easy, man. And, just say no. What's up, Jason? It's good to see Jason. I love his avatar. Is that McCarthy? It's so small. The avatar here of Jason, it could be Ronnie Bell or it could be McCarthy. No, it's JJ. So Jason, we are right in your wheelhouse today. So you're going to have an opinion on, can McCarthy have a great season, and can McCarthy then still come back next year? Or as I put it earlier, can you have your cake and eat it too when it comes down to J.J. McCarthy? Mark, be interested to see what he has to say. 5-year career, 26 teams. That's 5 per year, not including backups. Jason is saying that J.J. and Donovan Edwards will come back regardless if they do not win at all. Now, Jason, regardless, they're coming back. The running back position, which there's only, so much tread on those tires. You're saying that the one-arm bandit's like, I'm coming back regardless. McCarthy. Now, look, you say regardless. Jason, it was like Stroud. What's Stroud going to get? Like, I don't know, for being the number 2 pick, was he going to get like $30 million guaranteed? If J.J. McCarthy is a top 5 projected quarterback in the first round next year, I don't care how much NIL money you're talking about scratching together, it's not going to come close to, $30 million. I think about $5 million. I don't know. I'd start talking about millions, and I get a little bit like, it sounds like I'm throwing around $1 million here, $1 million there. But if I feel like Michigan could put $5 million together, I don't know if that's true or not, but Are they putting 5 together for Edwards as well? So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's nice thinking, but I would put that, I think, in the wishful thinking category. Nothing against you, JP. There's nothing wrong with wishful thinking. I mean, it's not a crime. Jason says, if JJ goes pro after this year, I won't be upset, especially if we win a natty. Well, Jason, if Michigan wins a natty, there's not going to be any room for anybody getting upset with anything. It is, what's to be upset about? Everybody can go pro. Everybody goes pro if Michigan wins a natty. Everybody takes a couple of weeks off from work and just sits around and thinks about Michigan just won the national championship. Oh, Jason, you went right to it. I wouldn't blame him either. I'll tell you, if he's for sure going to be a first-round pick, I'm going to have a hard time, regardless of what happens this season, of blaming him. I never, you could say blame, which is a, weird thing, kind of, but, I don't think anybody can blame him for going pro if he's going to be a first-round pick. Can I blame him if he's not projected? Like, there's those 5 quarterbacks. Let's just say those are the 5 that are projected as first round. And then when it comes to McCarthy, it said, well, maybe he would be a second rounder. Could you blame him then? You could say, JJ, you come back and have another year, you could go number 1. Just think about all that money. Plus, you're going to get maybe $5 million in NIL. Come on back. I might be able to blame him then. Richard's playing the let's trade game. Richard will trade a natty for JJ going pro. I will too. I'm with you there. Mark is talking about undefeated, 3 Big Ten championships. Who out of the Heismans that accept quorum, who wins the Heisman? Well, if I'm handicapping Michigan's Heisman chances, I'm going to put, even though that it's always the quarterbacks, so it's and I think JJ is going to be doing a little bit more this year, and I could see where both Donovan and Blake steal each other's thunder. I'm talking through this because I was just going to say Blake after what he did last year, but no, I think that's true. I think that these guys are going to steal each other's votes. Edwards for 75 yards touchdown. Corum, 65-yard touchdown. It's going to be JJ. JJ's going to raise his profile a little bit. I think that it would be JJ followed by Corum, followed by Edwards. But, it's fun to talk about. It's an easy argument. You can argue either any of the 3. Jason is saying JJ would be at the very least a top 10 pick if Michigan won it all. Did I see the YouTube Corum flick? It was great about his choices this last year. I saw some of the comments. I actually did not watch that myself. I can recall, where was it when he said he was coming back and, he talked for like 2 or 3 minutes. I was trying to think exactly who he talked to. Maybe it was Jansen. Maybe he was just talking to, I don't remember, but you listen to Blake Corum and you are a Michigan fan, you want to put your arms around him and give him a big hug. You want to build a statue of him. You want to say, this is what it's all about. And you just say, you just love this guy. He's everything about the maize and blue. He is everything about Michigan. It's all that's good about college football and work ethic and being a teammate and all of that. We're not talking about cashing in and dollar bill and all of that, and all that's there. But no, you listen to Blake Corum and the world is right. Everything. I mean, the guy is, he is special. He is. So I'm guessing, Richard, I'll want to watch that. It's not even a guess. I'm 100% sure I'll watch and I'll just be like nodding my head like, this guy's what it's all about. Because that's the way he sounds. Richard, you and I see that the same way. Jason is, I asked for his opinion and he's giving it to me. We'll be okay if JJ leaves. We will miss him for sure. I hope they let him throw more. If Blake put on 10 pounds of muscle, he's going to be a nightmare on defenses, 5'9", 220. Yeah, he's going to be a nightmare. He is going to be a nightmare for sure. And, Richard pointing out that he did 30 reps of 225. He's crazy strong. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. This is it. Okay, we'll take a few more here. There's got two more different things to be rooting for. Blue Dove says he needs to point out that JJ last year had fewer picks than Cade had in 2021. Well, that's the one thing about reading that story about like JJ made some poor decisions against TCU, and he did throwing the pick sixes. That a lot of people, that's going to be part of his story, and it was the last thing, so it was the biggest game. So those things are going to be magnified, and they are going to be talked about. But during the 12 games of the regular season, J.J. McCarthy was great at protecting the football, in not throwing interceptions. He threw his first one in the red zone in Bloomington when he had Roman Wilson, and he was trying to tuck one in there in a shot, and the guy stepped in front and picked him off. But it was down there in the red zone. If you're going to get picked, not a bad spot to do it. The next one was against Penn State, where it was a weird one. What was he kind of running? And I don't know, the ball kind of slipped up, ended up falling in the Penn State's player's arms, and he took it the distance. Now, I called that one fluky. Scarcelli did not. He did not like the ball security there or whatever. Regardless, that was a bad one, and that was a pick. And then and that was it, right? Until he threw one against Purdue. Is there another one that I'm thinking about that I'm missing? So there's the Penn State one, the Indiana one, and now I can't think of another one. Let me think. Let me go through the schedule a little bit after Penn State. Not against Michigan State, not against Rutgers, not against Nebraska, not against Illinois. So maybe he only threw two until the Big Ten championship game, where he threw one against Purdue when he had all day. So he only threw two, if my memory serves correct, which it usually, I don't know, I say it usually does. When it comes to J.J. McCarthy, it does. 3 picks, and including the Big Ten championship game, not too bad. There's the coach that wanted to weigh in. He's saying that Benjamin Hall will be very good. He remembers somebody that I don't know who you're talking about here. And, sorry, Antoine, when it comes down to, you're talking about most people who we don't know what you're saying or who you're talking about. Don says, would like to see JJ have a great year and be in the Heisman talk. That way we can develop a quarterback room, and that is able to keep the better quarterbacks coming in. Not bad. Michigan wins in the playoffs. JJ's gone. I don't disagree with that. It's hard to disagree with that. Don saying that great video. You guys, I'm excited. I feel like, that's like the one of these great box office movies, and everybody's seen it. Everybody's like, this is the greatest movie ever. I waited out at 12 o'clock and I saw it. And then somebody's like, I've already seen it 3 times. And I know I'm going to love it. And I'm just like, listen to everybody. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Except this way, I don't care about spoilers, though. Blake said he's a Michigan man through and through. It's like, okay. But and that's what Gary says. He is a true Michigan man. Look at that. The Punters, who's always got interesting things to say, says if Corum wins us a national championship, does he rank in the top 5 all-time favorite Wolverines? Immediately, I say yes. But, that is subjective. Is it, when you're talking about all-time great, if Michigan wins a national championships tell people things that they already know. Sometimes people say that I do that. I'll state the obvious, but you win a championship, you get canonized. And there's so few of them. So thinking about what it would do for each one of those guys, every player on the 97 team is look back, you memorize the lineups, the games, and Corum and McCarthy and everyone. So yeah, those guys will be put up on a pedestal, rightfully so. Now, the hard part is, punters, when you're talking about all-time favorite Wolverines, is when you're like, I don't know, Rob Lytle. I knew that name when I was like 7 years old, but I don't know, like he was the first kind of name. And so it was hard always to like think of somebody that I would have liked more than Rob Lytle. Anthony Carter. I was 8 years old. I didn't realize that, in college football that players left. And that was a real bad moment for me. That was a tough moment for my childhood when I learned that no, Anthony Carter will not be coming back to Michigan. I cried, I think. I asked Bo. I remember thinking about, well, if I ever interview Bo, I'm going to tell him, Bo, when I was a little kid, I cried when Anthony Carter left and realized that he wasn't coming back. And I asked Bo, and you know what Bo said? So did I. And I loved the response from Shem Beckler, who knew exactly what I was talking about. I don't remember any other questions that I asked Bo, but I do remember that one, and I remember his response. Andres is already putting Corum in his top 5. Richard putting Jamie Morris. Yeah, Jamie Morris is up there as well. Very good. All right, so that's what we talked about. One thing, the quarterback to root for. Let's get to some others. And this one might be easier. This is an easy one to root for because there's no have your cake and eat it too kind of situation. This one involves Michigan wide receiver Roman Wilson. Because if you watch this pod, then I'm higher on Wilson than most. Like, I think that he could be a great college football wide receiver. I think he is an explosive wide receiver. I think he could be an excellent NFL wide receiver. And people are like, I'm worried about Michigan's wide receivers. Like, okay, what about Roman Wilson? I'm worried about Michigan wide receivers. Well, it's hard because you're not worried about anything. You got to be worried about something. And you're not going to be worried about the quarterback. You're not going to be worried about the running backs. You're not worried about the offensive line or tight ends or deep. I mean, there's nothing to worry about. So you do go to the wide receivers. I get that part. But I think rooting for Michigan to have a wide receiver to have great stats and get picked high in the NFL draft is another one of those things that you just go through. Like, they did have Nico, Ronnie Bell went in the 7th, and then Nico Collins a couple years ago went in the 3rd, but they have not had skill position players anywhere, and then specifically wide receivers get taken very high in the NFL draft. And we know Michigan, the way that they play ball is that they are going to run more than almost every other Power 5 team, maybe more than any other Power 5 team. So there's not as many targets available. And this could help out with running backs, could help out with offensive lines, tight ends who want to do both, and Harbaugh's history there. There is a thought, and maybe it's true, although it doesn't seem to be now, that it could hurt Michigan in recruiting a top-flight quarterback, because does a quarterback really just want to go to a school and just hand the ball off anymore? No, they want to throw it. But Jaden Davis decided that he still wanted to go to Michigan, even though Michigan runs the ball so much. And I do think I thought that they were going to throw it last year more, just because of the the talent that they had. But, Harbaugh was, like, no, we're going to continue to pound the rock. That's what we do. We pound the football. And they're going to continue to do it this year. But the idea is if you root for one of the players like Roman Wilson, is it possible that he could be an early NFL selection? That would obviously help Roman Wilson out, but it would also help other wide receivers that might be thinking about, I just don't want to go in and block. Guys want to go in and they want to win. They want to get great education. They want everything. And part of everything is throw me the damn football. Stats. I want to go to the NFL. And so if Roman is ready, if Roman gets picked in the NFL draft high, then that's going to be good news. So rooting for Roman Wilson to have a great year is an easy thing to root for and something that you might not be thinking about. But because of recruiting and in the future, it could help the Wolverines that way. Now, is it likely? Is there a chance with knowing how much Michigan gives the ball to their running backs? And I'm going to say yes. I took some of the players out from this year's draft. Roman Wilson is 6 feet tall. I looked at the wide receivers that went this year. Zay Flowers from BC, who went to the Ravens, is actually shorter than Roman Wilson. But he had a hell of a year when you looked at how many yards he had and everything else. But Roman last year had 376 yards and 6 touchdowns. 2 of those were rushing. One of those was in against TCU, but 25 catches for 376. He's going to need to bump that up, I would think, if he wants to go in the first or second round of the NFL draft. One thing that definitely helps Roman Wilson, it's not everything, but it helps. In high school, Roman Wilson ran a 4.37. If you listen to Harbaugh last year when he was talking about who are the fastest players on the team, he said DJ Turner goes out there, and when he runs, Roman Wilson runs right with him. That's almost an exact quote. You could go back. I might be missing it, but it's the essence. Wilson is as fast as DJ Turner. He runs right with him. Turner ran a 4. I know even when I say it, it sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about. DJ Turner ran a 4.26. Is that correct? Or is it a 4.36? 4.26 sounds like it's not possible, but I think I double checked it. A 4.26. So if Roman Wilson is running a 4.3, I think he's got 4.3 speed. If you look at the 40 times of the 2 wide receivers that I put up on the screen, USC's Jordan Addison, who's 6 feet tall, he ran a 4.49. He had 59 catches for 875 yards and 8 scores last year for USC. A team that throws the ball a lot. Is it doable for Roman to more than double his production catch-wise? Maybe. But what about the Spartans' Jaden Reed? 6 feet tall, ran a 4.45, which actually put him in the top 10 for wide receivers in the draft last year. But how about Jaden Reed? 55 catches, 636 yards. So Roman would have to double his production catch-wise. Or if he's getting into the end zone, Roman had more touchdowns than Jaden Reed last year. And, with Ronnie Bell and with A.J. Henning vacating the punt return slots, positions, and kickoff, which I think Roman Wilson was back there anyways, run 1 or 2 back, run a punt. That's Desmond, what that can do for your draft possibilities. And are we sleeping on Roman Wilson as a Heisman Trophy candidate? Sleeper. Roman Wilson. They don't throw the ball enough. Maybe they do, but I think targeting Roman Wilson a little bit more. And remember, JJ targeted Roman Wilson a few times. I'm going to say at least 3, but maybe even 5. I'd have to go back. Maybe Mark, who remembers things that happened during the season even better than I do. Maybe Roman Wilson was targeted like 5 times downfield, talking about like complete bombs, and then JJ overshot him by a little bit, sometimes by a lot. But I can remember at least 3 of those instances. If JJ just got that married up his arm and got on the same page as the receivers, which we have talked about, and the explosive passing game, I'm expecting Michigan to connect more on the deep downfield passes. Enter Roman Wilson. He catches a couple more there, couple more touchdowns, a lot more yards. Kind of like what did Roman do in the semifinal last year? He should have had he had 2 touchdowns. He ran one, he caught another one, I think on a flea flicker, and then he had, of course, the one, I hate to bring it up, but the one that he was in. He scored, and then they took it away from him. I mean, he had a hat trick his last time out. 2 of them were on deep shots. So I'm saying that this is something that you can root for and should root for and has a possibility of happening. Roman Wilson having an exceptional year as a wide receiver, as an explosive wide receiver in the downfield passing game, and getting taken early in the NFL draft. And there's some of the guys that went in front of him. You know, Jordan Addison, Jaden Reed. I pulled those 2 guys out because they both are 6 feet tall. Now, there it is. What do you think about the possibility of Roman Wilson being able to get it done in the passing game? Let me get to some of these. Hey, what's up? D Original. Kojo's going to have the breakout year. All right. You know, I'm all right, you know, with, either one. And it could happen. The Original's going back and saying Wheatley was his favorite. Wheatley, Bianca Batuka, AC, Rob Lido. Now you're really getting into my wheelhouse there. Okay, let's go. I'm asking you about Roman Wilson. The Original going to Antoine's talking about other sites and other analysts. So sorry about that, Antoine. Mark, just thinking Ronnie Bell had a lot to gain this year. Don't want a hitting 2.0 for him. Scooney went first, but after a season-ending injury, understandable. Yeah, where they get drafted and all that, Ronnie Bell he's in a good spot and all that, but I understand what you're saying there when it comes down to Ronnie Bell. Let's see, on the 40 times, how are they secret? That seems kind of basic competition topic measured regularly and talked about. Yeah, well, they do when you're going to the combine. That's when they're out there. But, coming in, Michigan used to have their own, and I don't know if they did this last year, if they do it. They don't always reveal, or do they? Like they have their own kind of combine, and they put them through the paces that they're going to have to go through in the NFL, and then they put some of that stuff out there. Or they call up Bruce Feldman if somebody's really freaky, and they say, hey, you can be on the freaky list. But maybe they do, hold some of that information back. I don't know if you know this, and a lot of schools do this. They like keeping everything real. And Michigan used to be like even worse. Like, let's hold everything close to the vest. Let's not tell anybody anything. And then you had, only like the few chosen ones would get some information, and it'd come out like Tyrone Wheatley is fast. Well, Tyrone Wheatley was a different kind of cat because, he was a track star, and you get all of that. But some of those 40 times is, they don't always come out and just throw it right out there. Mark indicating that punt return seems far more important than kick return. We are not Northwestern as we create a lot more punts. Yeah, good point. Travis, JJ needs to stay through his senior year. I understand what you're saying. Roman just needs to stay healthy this season. Let's say it together, Ty. Roman needs to be ready. He needs to be Roman ready. Why? OT. Johnson and Wilson are in store for big years. They'll both be drafted higher than Darboh and Chesson. Well, so higher than a third round pick? Maybe. I'm with you on that. Gary goes back and he liked one Butch Woolfolk. I can't say I like, everybody that comes up any play. I liked him too. I did like Butch Woolfolk. I can't be, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Running backs, Rob Lytle, Tyrone Wheatley, Biaka Batuka, Jamie Morris, Michigan Mike Hart. Those are my top 5, I think. But where's Blake Corum coming in there? And now the Don. I got to get, put those in the top 5. I think I got to put, Jamie is my friend. But I got to take him out of there. I'm putting Blake in there. It's happening. Andres having a conversation with Antoine. Let's see. We need at least one more wide receiver to step up. Tyler Morris, Darius Clemens, etc. I think when you say etc. or Peyton O'Leary. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Now I have one more. But now we get to Antoine, who's participating in the show. What about Leroy Horde and Gerard Bunch? I like both of those guys too. I did. I think I had Leroy Horde on my fantasy team when he played for the Vikings. I loved it. Bunch, Horde, let's go. Yeah. Top 5 running backs? No. Top 10? What happens is you go back to when you were young and you start rolling off the Biaka Batukas and the Lytles and all of that and, the Morrises. And then, you forget about the one-armed bandit and Blake Corum and Haskins. And then you're like, come on. You like them all. Mark gets the last word on JJ. He says, while I would like JJ in 24, I'd really prefer that he flourish and that we get an early top 3 quarterback drafted as what Michigan does. Good points. Michigan gets a top 3 quarterback drafted. Other quarterbacks are going to be like, I'm going to go to Michigan. I can get drafted as a top quarterback in the NFL draft. Sign me up. Where do I go? Maybe somebody like, I don't know, Bryce Underwood takes a look at it. And Underwood's like, you know what? I could be a top 3 pick going to Michigan. I'm going to go in there and let's go. I'm with you on that. All right, one more thing to root for. And this one's, I don't know if it's abstract, if it's the right word. That's the word that just came to my head. There are 5 NFL coaches with different teams this year. And, the NFL, they always say, and I think we can all agree on this, it's a copycat league. They go for, and right now what's in vogue is young coaches, young, exciting coaches. You look at the Cardinals. They hired some dude named Jonathan Gannon, who's 40 years old. DeMeco Ryan comes over from the 49ers. He's only 38 years old. He goes to the Texans. Shane Steichen, who was with the Eagles. Steichen, he's only 38 years old. He's going to go to the Colts and work with AR-15, Anthony Richardson. All of these guys young, and that's kind of where the NFL coaches are going. Now there's the rooting part, and this is what I am going to be rooting for this year. There are 2 coaches that are, what I'm going to say, they're just hired this year, that are older coaches. Sean Payton for the Broncos, he is 59 years old. Frank Reich, the Panthers, recycled head coach, is 61 years old. If you look at old Jim Harbaugh, actually, him and Peyton are born like days apart. They're both 59. 59 years old. Now, if Sean Payton has success with a deadbeat Broncos, the only team that looks like worse than the Broncos are probably the Cardinals and what Jonathan Gannon has working for him. But if the Broncos have a lot of success, teams are going to be looking and saying, 59 years old. Maybe Jim Harbaugh at 59 years old, maybe he isn't so old to bring back into the NFL. And Peyton took some time off. It would just it'd match up a little bit too close of a matchup for me. So I am going to root against the Broncos so nobody gets any blueprint ideas. And I'm going to root against the Panthers as well. Same thing. Former quarterback in the NFL, not as accomplished as Harbaugh, but, Frank Reich. And interestingly enough, last year, who did Harbaugh interview with? No, he could say he just had a call with the Panthers owner. I looked at it as an interview. You may not. I did. We could argue with that. I'll defer to you. But he talked to the Panthers. He also talked to the Broncos. So, I don't know. Let's root against Peyton and Frank Reich. Now, these are small things. You could say, really? That's what you're going to root against? I am. Now, you could point out that the defending Super Bowl champs are the Kansas City Chiefs, and Andy Reid is 65 years old. You could also say that Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll, those guys are in their 70s. I think they're both 71. You would also be correct there. But they've been around the block so often, and it's just about these coaches that have come in, and there's two. So you wouldn't say, well, I want to root against Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, because the old guys, and they'll think, well, let's go with an old guy like Jim Harbaugh, But new coaches, and there's their age. And it's very similar to Jim Harbaugh. And I don't say this every week, maybe not even every month, but it's right out there hiding in plain sight. Jim Harbaugh, after winning the Big Ten last year and getting to the college football playoff, got a new contract for more money for his assistants, and he didn't sign it because there was a proviso in there about this buyout, which is really small right now in his current contract. The new contract, while it gave him a lot of money and his assistants a lot of money, had a gigantic buyout. And Harbaugh was like, meh, I'm good. So there's a possibility that once again, Jim Harbaugh is going to try to go to the NFL. If Peyton and Reich don't have success, when there's an opening, these other NFL owners might be like, you know what? Let's not bring in a 60-year-old Jim Harbaugh. It didn't work for Peyton. It's not working for Reich. Let's give him let's ghost him. I don't know, whatever. Let's not hire him. And so there's a chance. There's one other thing in my mind to root for. Could be what you'd say a little bit obscure. What am I talking about? But I thought about it, and I'm not going to be rooting for the Broncos or the Panthers, and that's the reason. So that's where I am at with that. Let's take, in the remaining minutes, some feedback. Doug asking about quarterback recruits. When are they going to start committing? Well, Michigan's got their quarterback right now. Raiola, the top quarterback, according to Rivals, just committed to Georgia a couple of days ago. So you might be talking about the following year with 24, like Bryce Underwood or Cutter Boley, who was also a 25, right? 25. I think I said 24, along with Underwood, although he might reclassify. We don't know. Maybe. He's announcing this week. It makes you feel like he is going to reclassify. But when would Underwood? I mean, like, he hasn't made any declaration about when he would do that. Is he going to do it before his junior season of high school? I don't know, maybe. What he should, I don't know. I was going to say what he should do. I was going to say, go take all your visits, go see the country, go do all of that. And then, see what happens. I would see, to be honest, to see what happens to get the most information that it could. I would let the college football, if I was a 25, I would let the entire college football season play out and see what happens with coaches, with the teams, with the quarterbacks. And especially, totally, especially, if I'm one of the top 5 players in the country, Michigan will wait on Bryce Underwood if he's interested in him. And that's kind of what you do. You're not, I was going to say held hostage. You're not held hostage, but the higher if somebody is thought of, the more teams that want them, the more you kind of have to play that game. You got to play that game with the 5 stars. That's it. So do I have any idea specifically if you're talking about Underwood? No. But the second-ranked quarterback in that 25 class right now is Boley, who was interested in Michigan, and he's announcing later this week, but I think he's talking about coming in next year. And so that eliminates Michigan. Even though there, I don't know, others that were thinking that maybe, Michigan would want him or he would still want Michigan, trying to, I don't know, people are trying to create waves, make a name for themselves, all of that kind of stuff. Here's Antoine. Antoine loves waiting around for quarterbacks. I know that. Here's what I know about Antoine. He does not want to wait around to the very end for 5 stars and quarterbacks. Antoine, who is a lot like my friend, who always says, if they don't want to go to Michigan, screw them. And let's see what Antoine is saying about Underwood. Quarterbacks ain't going to recruit for a long time, especially Underwood. I think he means commit. Richard asking about Haskins and the Texans, but I think the D Original has answered the question. He is with the Titans. I don't think that they cut him. Yes, Antoine, I'm with you. Quarterbacks are not going to be committing for a long time. That's right. Don't you think a team that is terrible and needs fans would take Harbaugh? Well, I don't know. Well, I think now, yeah, I think that there's a chance. But what happened this last year? He didn't get the job. What happened the year before? He wanted the job. And the year before, I think that he wanted the job, but nobody would call him. Understandably, I think a little bit after the 2020 season. So what would be in store for him after next year? If they go out, Michigan has a great year and Sean Payton does a good job with the Broncos. There are going to be some teams like, we could do worse than Harbaugh. Yeah. Because when you just look at what he's done in the NFL, it's almost like, who cares how high maintenance or whatever else he is? Bring him in. Let's do it. So that's what I'm rooting for. That's what I see. Mark says, next show, if JJ goes pro, transfer quarterback wish list to Groom Davis and win a 4th Big Ten in a row. Not a bad idea. Talking about the transfer portal list. A little early for that, Mark. So how do the assistants feel about this? About what, Harbaugh? Well, I think Jerome Moore could feel really good about it. And I think that it's no secret that if Harbaugh would have gotten the job with the Broncos or the Panthers, that Michigan would have elevated Sharon Moore as their next head coach. You remember when they were he was doing his thing with the Vikings, and it looked like he was gone for about 24 or 48 hours the succession plan was, just getting going. And that's where Josh Gaddis was like, "Ooh, I got my shot." And they were like, "We're not going with you, Josh. You got too many things off the field. The recruit stuff, the stuff, we need to go back over it." And then, he was done with Michigan after that. So I think, the thing is like college football, it's a coach's game. The pros, it's a player's game. But in college, it's about the head coach. And right now, Michigan has a top 5 head coach in Jim Harbaugh. So he can do whatever he wants and he can go in anything else. But Sharon Moyer might have success, but you're talking about trying to replace a top 5 coach. Very difficult to do, so it can happen. Who's it happened with? Who's been a top 5 coach that has gone from college and then the team didn't miss a beat? Let's see. Oklahoma lost their coach last year, and it doesn't look very good for them. Uh, and what's it? I mean, they were a powerhouse, so you got to think through. Ohio State it worked for. Old first base. OSU had it going. Ryan Day stepped in, and that's why a couple years ago I was thinking, Michigan had their returning starter coming back at quarterback. Ohio State had lost. Urban Meyer, we're bringing in a new coach. The game was in Ann Arbor. I was thinking it was now or never. And then it felt like that after Michigan got pasted in that game. Doug asking questions that I don't know about. So there we go. Gary's talking about why change if you're happy. Good point. Bryce is going to be with U of M. I see us also picking up Tatum. Wow, the original. He thinks Michigan's going to get Taylor Tatum running back for this year, and then Bryce Underwood next year. Tim asking questions. Who are your top 5 Michigan favorites? Woodson, Carter, Wheatley, Howard, Harbaugh. Ooh. Well, Carter is number 1 for me. Woodson would be in my top 5 for sure. Wheatley, I think I'm going to put Wheatley in my top 5 for sure. So there's Wheatley. I would also put, I'm going to put Jarrett Irons in my top 5. And also Rob Lytle. There'd be my 5. That's a tough one. But I like your picks. Very good. Harbaugh only goes to a team if he thinks they can win a Super Bowl. It's not going to be an Urban Meyer to the Jags, Brady to the Bucks. Yeah, I don't know about that, Mark. It's not like San Francisco is sitting there looking really pretty. I mean, what they come up, it can happen where you don't have a head coach and yet it looks like it's going to be a Super Bowl team, but mostly that's not how it goes. Mostly it is teams like, the Colts who bottom out and look terrible, the Texans who are the worst, the Panthers who were horrible, the Cardinals who are the doormat of the NFL, along with the Broncos who have no future. They're the ones that are looking for head coaches. But, could it be, I don't know, Belichick and Carroll are both 71 years old. Could both of those guys in the Seahawks roster? Maybe it could happen. I don't know. Trying to get a read on Jim Harbaugh. Anytime I hear somebody say, I got a read on Jim Harbaugh, it's like, okay, what's the read? But when they give you the, like they think they can crawl inside Harbaugh's head, that's a tough place to go. Yes, he was. Gaddis was salty. Miami back in the day was a pretty good spot when Jimmy Johnson left. No doubt about that. That's a great one, Doug. They just kept it going. The beat went on when old Jimmy went to the Cowboys. They kept that thing rolling for a while, didn't they? Jim Harbaugh would go to the Bears before the Lions. Yes, he would. No Tom Harmon in my top 5. No, I didn't go for Harmon's Michigan. Tim Biakabatuka. Here's somebody throwing in the A train in their top 5. All right, we could do top 5s all day long. That is going to do it. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Reminder, coming up tomorrow, I will be over on the Den on the Maize and Blue Review, typing up things about Michigan football and asking questions and working back and forth with the people and discussing Michigan football. And then on Friday, we'll be back, and we hope to see Andres there. We had a tough time without having the podcast yesterday. We hope to see Andres one day at a time. We'll see you on Friday for another good afternoon Michigan football. Until then, everybody have a great day, and thanks for joining us.